Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Unbreakable Her podcast, where we make space for the stories of resilient women. We're continuing in our Mother's Day or Mother's Month theme, which is celebrating mothers through her son's eyes. And we have with us today Ernest Thomas, who is going to share a little bit about his experience with his mom. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here to talk about my mama.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm really, really excited about that. So as I do, I always just kind of start with how I know our guests, and
yes,
I've known Ernest for a long time, a
long
long,
time.
as they say, a long periodically time.
Yes,
So just from church, it's been decades at this point, and I know his mom too. His
yes.
mom and my mom are friends and have been for a long time as well. So I'm really excited to learn about this side of her literally through her son's eyes. So we'll just open with you telling us, who your mom is, and then just giving us a bit of a snapshot of what it was like to grow up with her. So like your childhood with her as
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah, so my mother her name is Patrice Thomas. Some people call her Patty. People call her Patricia. I call her mother when she gets on my nerves. I call her mom when I'm happy with her. I am the male version of my mother. It's funny because when people see us, they say I look a lot like my mom until I get around my dad. And the older I get, the more I realize you're more like your parents than you think you are. My mother is a powerhouse woman. She is, well, in church, obviously, we know from church, she's a preacher. She has a love for women. She's a podcaster herself. When she's not doing that, she works in the health industry. She's worked in the health industry until as long as I've known her. When she's not doing that, she is at the gym. When she's not doing the gym, she is feeding the homeless on Saturday. When she's not doing that, she's trying to go back to school for something, or she's getting on my nerves. So she is all in one. She is a lot of people's mother. She was a youth leader. She's just an all around woman. Growing up with my mother, I'll say it was as a kid, I thought she was the meanest woman ever. Like I love my
Mm.
mom to death, but my mom was so hard on me. Like I had to look neat and I had to look clean all the time. And I grew up, in the home where you went to Catholic school, you got good grades, you talked proper, you did everything you were supposed to do. And as a young boy growing up in Philly, my mother had a tough job because I wanted to be a young boy that kind of was like all of my friends, but I also had to be this proper church kid. So my mom kept me fly. One thing I do remember as a kid, I was always fly. When I was a young kid, all my clothes were custom made by my grandmother. My mother kept me looking good all the time. And we were blessed. She was blessed to only have one child. So she was able to splurge. My mom made sure I had the best of everything. Um, I felt like she was being hard on me as a kid. You always think your mom is just always hard on you. I thought she was very overbearing. My mother, being a creative, I think my mother's also creative. They're very, very vocal about what they think and how they feel. And my mother was very vocal about how she wanted my life to be set up, how she wanted things to be done. She knew that the world wasn't always going to be kind to somebody like me, so she wanted to set me up for success. But I was spoiled rotten. I got whatever I want. As long as I got good grades, I got whatever I wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about how that manifested in terms of like how you engage with your mom as a young person? When you say that she was very specific about how she wanted you to conduct yourself and wanted things to go, and you felt like she was strict. Um, were there any points where you butted heads, or something that you can share about
Yeah.
times where you butted heads?
So as a kid, I mean, you do what your mother said, right? You
Right,
go out in
right.
public. If she said sit down, you sit down. If
Hmm.
she said do that thing. So as a kid, I mean, no, I just thought this is just how life was. I just thought I had a strict Christian mom. When I wasn't at school, I was at church, kind of thing. Um, we didn't really start butting heads until maybe I got into my teens. And I was learning who I was. I was becoming more creative. I knew I wanted to be an actor as a kid. And being an only child, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that you get. Like I was in every program. I was in baseball, I was in football, I was in acting camp. And when you have the only child, you want to teach them to be independent, right? Biggest thing is a lot of only kids learn how to be independent at a young age. Being independent without being mature is just opening up a world of chaos. So I was able to, my mother taught me how to talk very proper. I was able to talk for myself. I was able to hold conversations with adults in a proper setting, right? I was able to um, speak for myself. I was able to make decisions on my own. So when me and my mom would get in conflicts, or I also grew up with a black mama. You do as I say. You don't ask questions back. If I say sit down, sit down. If I say
Mhm.
no, it's no. If I say 2 plus 3 equals 8, you didn't question if 2 plus 3 equaled 8.
Mhm.
And I got to the age where I began to talk back. I was able, I had an opinion and I wanted to be heard, and I believe that creative children are beautiful, but they are also terrifying for parents. So I think my mother knew at a young age that she had a child that was going to be creative. I was going to be the leader. I was going to be, I was always going to be in charge. I was going to be someone that was going to be at the position that I am in life. And I think that terrified my mother because creative kids think differently. They move differently, and they feel differently. And mothers have to figure out how to protect something they don't fully understand. Like I think my mother knew me, but she didn't fully understand who I was. So, how do you give your child enough freedom to express themselves without them being too disrespectful? And I think that when that happened, we would just bunt heads a lot. Just it
Mhm.
was just and so it's my mother's testimony, but there was a season in our lives when my mother was raising me as a single mother. Like my father was in my life. He's always been around. Everybody knows my father was, but they weren't together. And regardless of how well you can co-parent, when you're not together, you're a single parent.
Mhm.
So I think that was also difficult too, raising a young black boy as a single mom, while also having her own ambitions. My mother has always been a person about education, going back to school. So there was a season in my life where my mother was going to school, working full time, and had a part time job at Macy's because I had to be fly. So I loved Ralph Lauren. So she would she got a job specifically at Macy's working in the Ralph Lauren male section just so she can get the discount, just so I can look fly going to school every day.
Wow.
And doing that, I had to grow up quickly. I had to become independent quickly. And when you feel as though you've grown, you're gonna start speaking like you're grown. So um, it became difficult to keep those boundaries in place as I was growing as a young man, and my mother trying to live her life and do her dream, and also raise this young boy.
Mhm.
Hope I answered that question.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah, I think there's always with every parent-child relationship, there are these sort of ebbs and flows and these
yes,
these seasons that the
absolutely.
relationship goes through. The teenage years are
Whew,
typically part of that. I
yes,
certainly can attest to that, but we I don't think until I actually became a parent, I
yeah,
didn't realize or start thinking about, or maybe it was a little bit before then, but it took definitely me getting older and maturing as an adult to realize that as hard as it is, or as hard as it was for me as a teenager and a young adult adjusting to my own independence with my
yes,
mom, it was really tough for her too. And so I don't
yeah,
think as children we're not conscious of the fact that this shift is hard for them to navigate as well.
absolutely,
And
yeah,
so you don't realize that in the moment. So can
yeah,
you talk about the time, or when you and your mom, your relationship shifted where now this, I don't want to assume or
yeah,
presume this, but I know for me and my mom, there was a point that it shifted kind of into friendship. Can you
yeah.
share like when or if that happened for you too?
Yeah, so the shift didn't really take place for me until my late 20s. That's when it started to shift. They always say you can't move a boat quickly, you can't move a vessel quickly. It takes some time. I think that we started making the decision that it had to turn when I got in my late 20s. I decided at 23 that I was ready to move out. At that point in my life, my parents got back together when I was a little later in life, and we all lived together. And one of my best friends, her name is Rhonda, and you'll see her on my page. You'll see her on my mom's page. We call her son he's my nephew. That's their grandchild. Um, they moved in with us at that point, so it's a house full of people. I am itching to get out. Like I am itching to get out because even when I was 18, I still had rules. Even though if I went out, I still had to be home by a certain time. And I was like, this is crazy. And then at 21, it was even worse. Like it went from at 18, you could be a house at midnight. At 21, you could be a house at 12:45, 1 o'clock. I was like, lady, you are crazy. This is crazy. I think at 23, I was like, I'm ready to get out. I'm ready to go on my own. And my mother was totally against it. Like she was like, you're not moving out. You're not ready. You're not none of this. And I'm like, I'm moving out. It was the first time I made a decision. I went downstairs. I'll never forget. I talked to my dad. I was like, Dad, I want to move. My dad was like, hey, you want to move? You want to move? You know how Bob is like, yeah, I think it's time for you to move. My mom was like, you're not moving. And I didn't think she took me serious until I started looking for apartments. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. I found an apartment. I was on the search too. I think I was like, I had finally got a real job where I was like a real full-time job, a real adult job. I wasn't making good money. I was just making enough money at the time that I just knew I could get out. And back then, like I'm old, apartments were only like 650. Like they weren't really a lot of money to like move. So I'll
Oh,
never
those were
forget.
the days.
I mean, really, right? So my first apartment was $650. It was one bedroom living in University City at that. Now, come on, you can't even beat that. I was like on 42nd Street. And I'll never forget, we went to go look at the apartment. My mom took me. I never forget. And we went to go look at the apartment. It was like 7 o'clock at night, right? So it's pitch black. I'm just ready to move. So we go into the apartment. The apartment is trash. I should have never moved into that apartment. Um, it was just dark. There was no electricity in the apartment complex. And so we saw this apartment in the dark. And I looked around. I was like, yep, I'll take it. I'm moving. I'm ready to move in. And Monique, let me tell you, the bathroom was in the living room. That's how bad. Like, so if I'm having guests, you got to go to the bathroom. Like, you're just walking right in the living room to go to the bathroom. And if you had an experience in the bathroom, we all know what you experienced. Like, it was just that bad. And my mom didn't say nothing. She said, okay. She let me sign the lease, and I'll never forget. And I have a picture, and I have to find this. I decided I was packing up. I had no furniture. There was nothing. I had hand me downs from family members, and I think the shift took place when she drove the pickup truck from our house to my new apartment. That's when the shift changed. That's when the friendship started to really um, happen. And but it was still very, I'm your mother, you the son. Like it was still, she was telling me what to do in my own apartment. Like, it was very much, I still need a key. It was very much, I would come home from work some days and my furniture was not the way I left it. There was couches that was catty cornered. There was like, my mom had stuff everywhere. I feel like that was the first level when our relationship shifted. To believe it or not, it stayed like that until my grandmother passed, maybe about 3 years ago.
Wow.
We were still kind of like figuring out things. Like my mother was still a certain respect level, but I believe, according to me, that my mother was still holding the reins as I'm the mother, you're the child, from a place of I can still control everything. Like my mother would tell everybody, he's grown, he can make his own decisions, but she was, you're not doing this very much. When my grandmother, that whole transition when my mother got sick during COVID, I believe that's when the boat really changed in our relationship. And not only were we mother and son, but we became friends. And I was able to really begin to have some honest conversations with her about life and work and where I was and some of the things that I had struggled with that I had kept buried on the inside for years. And watching my mother take care of her mother and keeping her promise and taking care of her every day, we became friends because I saw the struggle and I saw the weight on my mother and I was able to help her. And she began to lean on me. For years I've always leaned on my mom. Even when I was a adult, can I still borrow $20? Can I still borrow $40? Um, at that point, I was at a place where she could lean on me and she could begin to become honest. And when my grandmother passed, that's when I was able to really start having real life conversations with her. And we have been amazing ever since.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Before we move on, and this is
Yeah.
a complete digression, I just
Yeah.
am really fascinated by the fact that your mom, even at 23, your mom was like, "Nope, you don't need to
Yep.
go anywhere,"
Yep.
which is a contrast
Yeah.
to a lot of what we see in Black homes, which has historically been this: you 18, you need to get out, you need to go on.
Yeah.
And I think, recently, and by recently, the last, I would say the last 10 years, the discourse has started to shift. Like, Well,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
18-year-olds
Yeah.
have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
18-year-olds cannot,
No,
survive by
they
themselves.
can't.
I
They
mean, we
can't.
do it, right? But, like,
Yeah.
that's not
No,
ideal.
it's
We
not.
don't You don't need to be kicking them out at 18. So
No, no.
I think it's fascinating that your mom was just like, "Mm-mm, mm-mm,
Yeah,
nope."
yeah. No, yeah, my mother was she was against it. And then Monique, she was at my house every day when I moved. Like there was always an excuse for her to be at my house. I'm like, lady,
Mhm.
I need you to go where you live. Like, but I think mothers spend years teaching their sons how to leave them, but secretly praying that they never do.
Mm,
And I think that my mother knew as raising a son and a black male that I have to teach him how to be independent, but I secretly don't want him to go out in the world because I know that the world is harmful. Young black men are being killed. You see a lot of things happening. And my mother did not want that to happen to me. She didn't want me
yeah.
to struggle the way she did.
Mhm.
My mother never made our struggles look like struggles. Something about women, you mothers, you have a
Man.
way of making struggles look so easy. I mean, even when you can see we're struggling, like you have a way of making it so comfortable. I look back at our life now and I can now see times where my mother didn't know what was like how we were going to make it, how we are going to do things, and she made it look easy. It's like they say black food, collard greens and things. We know
Mhm.
how to make something out of nothing,
Yeah,
and my mother always knew how to make something out of nothing. She
yeah.
always knew how to make sure that I had the best of everything. Like
Mhm,
I didn't have to go to public school because
mhm.
she's going to make sure that I had the best of everything. My mother also knew that there were certain things that as a boy you need to know how to do. You need to be able to play sports, you need to be able to fight. I grew up on 52nd Street, to believe it or not. My grandmother lived on 52nd and Paxton Street. And as a young boy, I was always clean. Let's just start from there, right? I was one of those clean young boys. And we know what that means. Clean young boys, well spoken. Back in the day, I was wearing jeans with like corduroy shoes. Like I was just fly. My dad was fly. So my mother had to make sure that I knew how to fight. She had to know how to make sure I knew how to protect myself. She had to make sure that I could stand up for myself. That was the biggest thing for her, preparing me that you're not going to let anybody play you. You're not going to let anyone play in your face. You can speak up for yourself and still be respectful.
Mhm.
And being a church boy, you don't always fight. So I wasn't a big fighter growing up. But my mom was like, you ain't gonna be one of them church boys who don't know how to defend yourself, son. Yeah, we got the swords. We got the full armor of God, but we got these as well. Put your hands up and block your face, right? And my mother made sure that my father was always present, even when they were separated. She made sure that his voice was always in my life. She made sure that she always spoke well of him, even when they weren't on the same page. She taught me, even though you don't have a typical family the way it's supposed to look right now, you're going to have a healthy family unit. And I will always honor her for that. Like I will always love her for that.
Mhm.
Um, sometimes you don't even know what to prepare your child for. Like, and that is the weird thing. I gotta protect you from everything. But the world doesn't look the same way it does when I was 10 and when I was
Right.
5. So my mother always had to make sure that she was staying on top of what was happening. Like she met all the friends, she was always up at school. Like she wanted to make sure that I was well-rounded at all times, not just a church boy.
Right. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
How would you describe your mom? So, like, if you mentioned some of this,
Yeah.
but if you met somebody and they never met your mom, they didn't know anything about her, and you had like 90 seconds, how would you describe your mom to them so that you would give them a real solid sense of who she is as a person?
My mother is an outspoken, creative, opinionated, sensitive woman who will give you the shirt off her back. She's a woman that believes in, wow, this is harder than I thought. Not because I don't know what to say, it's just so much you can say about her. My mother, who's someone who's going to love you, she's going to be your protector, she's going to be your defender, she's going to be your battle axe, and she's going to push you. Yeah. Hopefully I answered that right.
No,
Hopefully, Mom, I
yeah.
hope I did you justice when you watch this. Don't be calling me like you don't know how to talk about your mother.
No, I always ask that question because I think sometimes people think they know.
Yeah,
And from the outside, particularly, like, sometimes people get introduced to one characteristic, and
Yeah.
they think that that gives them full insight into who a person is. So if they've met her as an opinionated person,
Yeah.
they may not know the other pieces. And so
I
yeah.
Yeah, and that's true, right? I know a lot of times when you meet my mom, one thing I think I inherited for both my parents: either you're gonna like me or you're not. Like
Mhm.
when you meet me in 90 seconds, you're either gonna be like, I like that person, or I'm like, I never want to talk to them again. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people see my mom as a strong woman, but I don't think they realize how many years she was silent,
Mm.
how many years that she didn't have a voice, how many years that she wanted to speak up, but she couldn't speak up because of me. And that is something that,
Okay, say
that
more.
is
Say
okay.
more.
So,
Say more about that, if you can.
yeah, yeah. So, I love when people say, my mom sacrificed. You don't know the sacrifice my mom went through, and I think that is so true. I mean, yeah. Sometimes they have to work 2 and 3 jobs, and sometimes they have to, do a little bit extra. But sometimes mothers have to stay in places they don't want to stay in order to protect you. My mother
Mm,
stayed in situations longer than she wanted to ensure that I was safe. And I'm not talking about like marriage or anything. I'm just talking about in everyday life. There's a lot of things that your parents sacrifice and they do because of you. There's a lot of things that your parents won't say to protect you, to make sure that you have an opportunity. I believe there's plenty of times my mom wanted to cuss people out and lay people out, but she
mm,
knew that that would negatively impact me. So she kept her mouth shut. I know there are plenty of times my mom showed up to things that she didn't want to show up to because she didn't want to embarrass me. Me and my mother, it's so funny. I'm almost 40 and my mother is still making life choices because she thinks she's protecting me.
mm,
And me and my mother I had to have a really heart to heart with her that day. Like, mom, live your life. Like, if you don't like it, leave. Like, if you don't want to be there, don't be. I'm going to be cool. And I think that as children, when we get to a comfortable place, we have to really release our parents to say, I'm good.
mm.
And I did not know I had to do that,
Got you. Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It
Yeah,
does.
like I didn't know that I had to release my mom and tell her, "It's okay. I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm gonna be okay. I need you to be okay now because if you're not okay, I'm not okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what they see is a strong woman who's speaking, but I think it's because she had to be quiet for so long.
Mm,
She had to stay in situations she didn't want to be in. She had to close her mouth. You know, like I never forget the time where there was a season in my life where I was struggling about who I was as an individual, what I
mhm,
wanted to do, where I wanted to go. There was a season in my life I didn't think I was going to be 30 or 40 because I could not imagine what life would look like at 30 and 40.
mm,
There was a season I didn't know if I want to go to the left or to the right. And I think that the things that I battled on the inside were showing publicly. So people speak to what they see, not knowing your full story. And I'll never forget the time I was in church and I was a young kid at this time. So, like, I was a young kid and I had experienced something that I was too scared to tell my parents at the time.
mhm,
And so I dealt with that. And people being people, I'll never forget, a young lady the girl said to me, she says, "You're just too feminine. Like you are just way too feminine. The way you walk, and she was imitating the way I was walking,
mhm,
church people, and to another lady in the church, and they were laughing about it. And it hurt me so bad. Like it hurt me for a very
mm,
long time.
mhm,
I never told my mom, never ever, because I just didn't know. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was struggling with something. I was embarrassed to tell her because I didn't want it to look bad on her.
mhm.
And my mother, and I just recently told my mom this like a couple months ago. I
Wow.
told her about this experience because I was writing about it and I wanted to tell her
Okay.
before she read it. And she said to me, she said, "Son, I've always known that." She said, "What you didn't know is one of my friends was sitting in the back of the church and they addressed it and they told me about it." And for years, my mom was like, there was one person my mom would just never be cool with. Like she'd be like, she's
Mm,
cordial. She has nothing. But you know how you are when you mess with that child. I don't care if it was 30, 40 years ago. I'm still side eyeing you, right? Like
forever.
forever, right? Like as Cardi B says, if you got beef with me, you got beef with me forever.
Forever.
And my mom was on it, and I never understood why. And it made it. She knew.
Mm,
She knew, and I understand.
mhm,
I understand what parents do what they do. I understand why they respond the way they do, and I understand why my mom felt so uncomfortable leaving me alone.
mhm.
You know,
Wow.
and when you become a parent, I guess they don't tell you that. I mean, they tell you that they're your kids forever, but they don't. I guess they don't explain that they're your kids forever.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if they're 60, 70, 80, 90. If someone hurts your child, it's as if they're hurting you as a kid.
100%.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
a lot of times, a lot of people see my mom as a strong woman, is because she's been fighting and defending me since I was 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
She knew that I was going to be a problem, so she shows up for battle every single time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I was gonna ask you was just about, what are what are some things that, a thing or some things that you didn't understand fully as a younger person, but that you fully understand as an adult?
One thing I didn't fully understand as a child that I understand now as an adult is why my mom kept showing up when my parents were separated. Like, why couldn't you just live your life? Like, why did you have to still show up and pretend that you were having we have this big family, like we're all good. And my mom taught me how to separate adult pain from parenting. That's one of the questions. And I did not realize that
Oh,
until
wow.
now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, say
Yeah.
more, 'cause okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is where I wrote this down. I didn't think I was actually going to say this, but I wanted to make sure that I honor my mom and said this correctly. My mom, there was a season where I was struggling. There was a season where she was struggling. Things weren't always going well at home. There were some issues. Again, her testimony, she'll give it to it when she's ready.
Mhm.
But through it all, my mom told me that love shows up, right? Not just when things are perfect, not just when relationships are easy. Real love shows up consistently.
Mm.
She taught me that you don't make your children carry adult pain. She never made me feel caught in the middle. She protected my relationship with my father even during difficult seasons. You know, um and I appreciate that because um when I was struggling with some things, when me and my dad, and it's no secret, me and my dad have come a mighty long way. We are like, I mean,
Mhm.
how can you not when you look just like him?
Yeah.
Bald and up. And my mom always set the tone of how I handle things because us when we get real emotional, I don't care who around. You know what I mean? I'm gonna let you know how I feel. I'm gonna pop off. But my mom always taught me she always taught me, excuse me, how to show up, how to keep your family sacred without pretending that everything was perfect.
Mm.
My mom, everything wasn't always perfect, but it was our family. It was our drama. It was stuff that we had to deal with. And even though things are not okay right now, we'll handle that later. But we're gonna show up as one family unit because at the end of the day, you got me and I got you, and that's all we have.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand that as a child. I didn't understand, I'm like, Mom, don't you why are you coming? And she said, I have to. You're my son.
Mm.
And I didn't understand it as a kid. Like I didn't. Christmases was always together. You
Mhm.
you know
Got you. Okay.
yeah, everything was always together. Right, when I opened up for Christmas, everybody was there. When I went to bed for Christmas, everything was there. There was no, this is what you get on your dad's side, this is what you get. Everything was just one. And I never felt what was going on between them two. Never felt
Mm.
1 ounce of it. She respected who he was in my life.
That is a gift because it can be, um, very difficult for
Oh my
children
good. Yeah.
having basically just being forced
Yeah.
to choose sides and navigate that alone
Yeah.
because the custodial parent is locked in their grief and anger. And
Absolutely.
that's honestly, that is no judgment
Yeah.
because when people don't always have the tools to
Yeah.
navigate hardship,
Yes.
particularly as parents. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you saying that your mom taught you that you don't have to make adult problems, you don't have to put the adult problems onto a
Yeah.
child.
Yes.
I mean that truly is a gift
Yeah.
because it's there are so many stories that people spend a lot of time in therapy trying to unravel and untangle those experiences.
Yeah.
So that's
I,
definitely a gift.
And she taught me therapy early. And listen, before there was social media, before the therapy became the new thing, I was in therapy at a young age. I think the first time I got smart with her, she said, "Yeah, before I kill you and have a jail ministry, we going." She said, "Before I end up in jail, I'm going to take you over to doctor somebody, and they're going to figure out what's going on the inside of you. Maybe you got some things you need to work out." And we gonna figure that out now because you talking to me like this means you want to go to heaven early. So
Not the prison ministry.
yeah, yeah,
Cause she
Thomas.
like, look, I'm
Listen,
I'm I'm called who I'm called to be.
I
Even
am who I
after
am
putting
wherever I
you
am.
where I'm gonna put you,
Yeah,
we gonna
yeah,
go ahead and we gonna
yeah,
have the prison ministry if we don't take
absolutely.
care of
All day
this.
long. Yeah. We are who we are wherever we are. And he wants me to be behind jails and tell the story of his goodness. But you're going to heaven. Because if you keep talking to me like that, if you keep talking to me like that, you're going to heaven at a young age.
And I'm going to prison. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna be at the funeral though. 'Cause I'm gonna plan it. I'm gonna put you down well. But after that, they taking me up to Sing Sing.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Oh boy. I love that.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. That she, valued and instilled care for mental health early.
She,
So that
absolutely.
yeah, that's really important. And I think it speaks to, like you said, your mom has always been really big on education. She is an educated woman, very much so.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
not just it's not always about like the credentials, but it's about being in
Yes.
spaces where you learn information that you may not have been exposed to because you don't know what you don't know.
You
You
don't.
know,
You know,
you don't know.
my mom was huge on education. Even now, she's huge on education. If you want to get my mom hot under the collar, say something about going to school. Like saying something
Hmm.
like, I never forget my mom gets hot under the collar when people say, you don't need all that education and education. And my mom, you want to get her hot under the collar and get her in a debate? Because my mom told me at a young age, she said, "You're not gonna be deep in church and clueless at the bank." I said,
Oh
"Well." I said, "Okay." You gonna know how to
yeah,
write a check. She said, "You gonna know how to write a check." She said, she said they can't go to school. That's why they're down in education. My mother is huge, Monique. When I thought I got called to the ministry, I thought that was the hardest thing I was gonna have to do. I thought going to the board was gonna be the hardest thing. Going through Patrice was the hardest thing. I'm 40 and I'll be 40 and it's still like if I can have a sermon that I've prayed about and I'm like, yeah, I did the research. It's prayer, fasting, prep, Patrice. The sermon that you hear on Sunday, some part of it has gone through the Patrice prep.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, Yeah, so I think it's a good place for us to land the plane.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we captured everything that you want to say about her, and then we're going to end with you just taking a moment to look right in your camera and say what you want to say to her.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So
is there anything that we haven't touched that you think is important to share about her before you talk to her?
um I don't think so. I mean, my mother is an awesome woman. That's all I can say. I would not be who I am without her. I am I think God has a really funny sense of humor when he gives you someone who is you. And and I am proud of the person I am because of her. Both parents, obviously, but this is her story.
Mhm.
And I want to say, Mom, I love you to death. I know I get on your last nerve, and I probably still owe you $20, but that's okay, right? You have loved me through what I thought was some of the hardest seasons of my life. You have shown up for me when I embarrassed both of us. When I was wrong, you showed up for me. When I was right, you showed up for me. I am grateful for every sacrifice you have made for me. I'm grateful that you showed up for me even when you didn't want to. I am grateful that even when you felt like I put other people before you, you still loved me and you understood. I may call many people mom, but you are my only mother. And I'm grateful that God chose you to be my mother and me to be your son. I will For the rest of my life, I will try to repay you for every sacrifice you have given to me. I would not be here. I would not be at this job. I would not be managing people if it wasn't for every lesson that you've given me. You are a walking, talking example of what it's like to live a true Christian life. Even when it's a little bit messy, even when you got to figure things out, you are a walking example. I am your biggest fan. I will always be in your corner. There's nothing that you do that I won't be at some form. When you get old, I'm gonna make sure you're in the nicest nursing home I can possibly. um, and I just appreciate you. I am the man I am today. I may not be a perfect man, but I am a man that I am today because of all you've done for me. And I hope that this podcast celebrates you and someone looks you up and find out who is this woman that raised this crazy young man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I hope the same.
Yes.
Thank you so, so much for sharing your mom with us. I can't wait to release the episode so that, she gets to see how much she means to you. And I'm sure you've
Yeah.
said it in many forms, but this will be a public one that will live on. It'll be
Yes.
on it'll be on many different platforms, so she can rewatch it anytime that
Absolutely.
if she ever is wondering, did I do a good job?
Yes.
She'll be able to pull this up and press play. So that's
And I
awesome. Thank
pray,
you.
Monique, that this helps you. Like I know that you're doing this and we talked about why, but I hope that this helps you as you raise your kids and become a phenomenal mom that you are because you are doing an awesome job. I look forward to the videos between you and your son. I think I may have seen him maybe 3 times in person, if that. But I feel like I've known your son since the day he was born, just watching him, and you're doing an incredible job. Please keep giving voices to unsung heroes. We always talk about the big people. We always talk about the big people that's doing things, and we always honor the big people. But if it had not been for some of these unsung voices, some of us would be in jail, crazy, dead, out of our mind. And thank you for giving voices to people that may have never had an opportunity to tell their story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That means a great deal. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. And
absolutely.
on that note,
Yes.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
for everyone who's listening, please make sure that you engage with this content, with the episode, comment, like, share, do all the things. And until next time, stay unbreakable.
Stay unbreakable.